There we go. Hey, good morning, friends. Welcome again to another painting stream, and welcome again to me not unmuting myself before I begin. It's alright, I'll get better at this. Today, I'm a little discombobulated because I moved my setup. So I am no longer streaming from the kitchen in my apartment. I am now streaming from the guest room / hobby room, which you can't see because all you have behind me is a blank wall. But you can definitely see that there's no kitchen behind me, right? Yeah. So that's, progress. Good morning, Jen. Thank you again for joining me. Good to see you. I've done a few small behind-the-scenes tweaks to the stream. I figure if I'm streaming every day, I can do little changes every day, right? I updated my follower goal, so if you see right below me here, over here, I now have a goal of 20 followers by the end of the month. I'm only 2 away from that goal, so I figure that's appropriate. I should be able to do that between today and tomorrow, hopefully. We'll see. I've got my coffee. I've got my painting station. I've got my models. I figure now is a good time to do some painting. So let's go to zoom camera. So I've it's a little washed out. Yeah, it'll do. Anyhow, so before we begin, let's look a little bit at where we currently are. I have been working on painting some of the Warcry minis terrain to prep for being able to demo it in the store at such a time as, store demos become a thing we can actually do. So I've got probably a couple of months to get this done, which is good because I'm slow. As we have discussed, I am not a fast painter. But let's take a look at what we've got so far. We have this little piece that I worked on a couple of days ago. I actually finished this off stream, so this is a piece that I did last week. And it's not completely done, like none of the pieces are completely done. I'm still doing fine detail work, and I still need to put a wash on there. We'll do that later. So we've got that little barrier. We've got this little corner barrier, which I was working on yesterday. Did these little red pieces here, and I think it came out very nice. It's beginning to really come together. Yesterday, we worked on a couple of other pieces because we had the copper paint open, or the brass paint. So we did some brass on a couple of these pieces. This piece is almost done because it's so tiny. It's so easy to do a tiny piece. Maybe today we'll finish working on that. Oh, thank you, Tybo Games. So I will not say that I am an extremely skilled painter. I am an extremely persistent painter, and there's a difference. You hear me talk about how slowly I paint, and I definitely am very slow and precise. And there are a lot of people out there who are better with technique and are faster and able to do more cool tricks and stuff. But I'm more of a slow and steady. I'll get there eventually. And part of the purpose of this stream is to try and learn some new tricks. So we'll be testing out some new stuff as we go. So I put some paint on this yesterday. We'll work on that today. We'll start working on some of the brown on these. I made a unhappy discovery today, and we'll talk about that. So those are the pieces I was working on yesterday, I guess. I've got a couple other pieces that I've put a little bit of paint on. We'll work on getting some more paint onto these pieces today to get a little bit more done. But the discovery I made, I have bought some more paint because this, as I said yesterday, the oak brown that I've been using as the brown for all of these, the bark on all of these stakes, is a bottle of paint that I got when I first started streaming, or when I first started painting about 3 years ago. And it's running low. So I bought more paint. I bought this. It was the closest I could find, but it is not exactly the same. This is flat brown. We'll see how well. I mean, it's pretty close. Maybe it is the same shade. I don't know. We'll see. But I needed more brown because I'm going to run out in that bottle. So we'll see how that brown compares. I wanted to show something else to you folks. This is, I don't know if it's disheartening, but it's certainly worrisome. I talked about the fact that I've not painted terrain before. And this is my first sort of foray into the world of painting terrain. In the past, I've painted, I've painted a few of my little Tau figures. It's going to show up better against the black there. There you go. So I've done a few Tau. I've done like one fire team and a couple of stealth battle armors. And that's something that I'll get back to when I'm done with this demo. I have this guy who is just sitting here waiting patiently for me to apply some paint to him. Someday we'll get back to that. But in the meantime, we're working on Warcry because I want to get this demo done. So this is the largest piece of terrain that I have painted so far, right? Let's compare that to the smallest piece of actual Warcry terrain. Compare and contrast there. This is going to take a little bit longer. This is what I was talking about yesterday when I was saying I need to work on applying paint faster. Just get it on the model, because this is a lot of space to cover when you compare it to this. Luckily, it's mostly just large areas of all one sort of tone. There's a couple small details that I can highlight, but it's mostly just going to be brown, 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 gray, gray, gray. I don't have to do a lot of extra work. Yeah, it's a fantastic sort of Planet of the Apes look to it. You're right, Jen. I'm actually really looking forward to painting it because, like, he's got these sort of open eyes. I'm gonna paint those with sort of green. He's got this headband, which I'm going to use that brass scorpion that I was using. So it's got lots of cool details, but yeah, it's just there's a lot more of it. So I'm gonna have to paint a little faster when I get to that. And I've got, this is going to be a lot of fun to paint. It's got this big bell and skeletons locked in cages. I'm worried about this. I don't want it to break off. Whatever. So that'll be fun. And then there's a bunch of just sort of these. There's 4 of these with different shapes that are just sort of, they're, you know, broken buildings that you would put on the table so that you have terrain to work around. They're going to be fun to paint, but they're going to be much more time consuming. So anyways, that's a project for next week, probably. This week I want to finish with all these tiny terrain pieces because it's good practice. It gives me a sense of accomplishment because I'm finishing stuff, and it gives me an opportunity to sort of block out the color scheme that I'm going to be using. So when I get to those big pieces, I know what color each piece of those is going to be. What should we start with today? I think I want to finish this because that's going to be quick and easy, and that'll give me a sense of accomplishment, and it'll be a good way to start my day. So we're going to do these little masonry bits, which means I need to find my deck tan, which I put away somewhere. Oh, that's pale blue. Castle gray, I'll probably need that at some point. So having moved into the hobby room, I actually have a place to put all my paints. I just haven't put them there yet, so that's something to work on. I don't think the paint I'm looking for is in this box. I think it's in another box. Okay, that's fine. Still unpacking into this new space. Alright, what do we got? Okay. So there's our brass scorpion. Don't think I'm going to need any of that today. Let's see. Skeleton bone. We're definitely going to be using some of that today. There we are. Deck tan. That's what I've been using for the masonry on these pieces. So we're gonna get a little blob of that. Shake it up, of course. I am definitely playing a dangerous game today because my coffee is just off camera here with my coffee. And that's my paint pot. And one of the greatest dangers of painting is the risk of dipping your paintbrush in your drink or drinking from your paint pot. And having the two of them so close to each other, I'm going to have to sort of be careful. You have to be wary. If you folks see me reach for my paint pot to drink from it, just sort of shout out in chat. Probably with the lag, it won't be in time. But, yeah. That would be less than pleasant. Okay, we've got our deck tan. And we're just going to do, this will be really quick. These little ceramic bits here. Actually, not ceramic. I've decided to do them as if they were marble. And we'll maybe experiment a little today with some marbling technique. So my wife used to do shop at school when she was in college and high school. She used to do tech for plays and set building and stuff like that. So she learned how to do marbling for sets. which involves sort of putting the random marbled texture or paint onto a plain white set, and then sort of smooching it around with a sponge while it's wet. So we're going to try, she's tried to do it at this scale, and it's a little harder because the paint doesn't behave the same on this scale that it does on like a flat for a set, because that's going to be a much larger piece, and the paint behaves very differently when it's a lot of paint on a larger piece that only needs to be viewed from an audience, so it has to come across from a great distance. Whereas what I'm trying to do is subtle little details on a piece that is potentially right up in somebody's face. But we're going to try that. We're going to try applying some paint and try and smooch it around a little bit with a tiny sponge. I've got a tiny sponge. And we'll see if we can get a nice sort of marbled look to these pieces of broken masonry that litter these battlefields. I'm also curious what these are intended to be. A whole bunch of these terrain pieces have at the base of their masonry these little symbols. You can see that there's a couple of them here. They look like teeth, right? They look like somebody just molded teeth into the base of their masonry. But why? What's the cultural significance behind having tiny teeth sculpted into the bases of all your archways? It's odd. It's very strange. I'll admit, Games Workshop does a lot of work on lore. Like, even their smaller non-main games. Like, we played some Underworld on our Battleground Games Live Twitch stream a while back. And even that, which is not one of their main games, has a good deal of lore to it. So there's probably a lot of lore in the Warcry universe for the Beastmen and for the Iron Golems. Lore which I haven't explored yet. So perhaps it explains why there's teeth in their architecture. But maybe not. Maybe it was just some whimsical, weird thing that the sculptor decided to do. And okay, here's the thing. Here's a thing that I've thought about, and I wish that the boxes and manuals, the assembly instructions for the Games Workshop stuff, this is that oak brown that I was talking about earlier. We're going to apply that to the base of this here and back here. I wish that the assembly instructions and manuals prominently featured the names of the artists, the sculptors. I'm certain that those names are listed somewhere, But, for example, I play a lot of Magic the Gathering. And every card has the artist's name prominently displayed on it, which I love. I think that's really great to give credit. We'll talk about credit for Magic art later, because that's an issue right now. But, I appreciate the fact that ever since the very beginning with Magic the Gathering, they've made an effort to let people know who's behind the art on the cards. And I kind of wish that Games Workshop did something similar. I'm certain there's websites dedicated to, who the sculptors are and their work. I don't know. I haven't been to an Omegathon, but maybe if you go to a big minis convention, there are sculptors in Artists Alley who have sculpts for sale. I don't know. It could happen. But at a quick glance, which is all I'll admit that I've really done, the identities of the sculptors are not easily discerned. I wonder if you are a true aficionado of Warhammer and Age of Sigmar and other Games Workshop things, do you start to recognize the artistic flourishes of particular sculptors? Like, you look at a piece like this and you see the teeth and you're like, oh, okay, this was obviously sculpted by so-and-so who does that kind of detail. Maybe that's too specific. Maybe you look at the skulls and you're like, oh, those skulls are in the style of this particular person. I'll bet that different sculptors specialize in different types of sculpts. Games Workshop has obviously a wide variety of armies. And I'll bet some people are better at sculpting stuff for orcs or Tau. I wonder if they have a single person who's responsible for an entire army, or if they have a sculpting Bible where they sort of discuss what should go into each army. These are the sorts of things I think about when I'm doing this painting. And yes, Amanda did sets for college. She was in the theater shop in college and high school. I'm sure she could tell you stories. In particular, there was not a rivalry, but an acknowledgement by the technical director, the person responsible for construction of sets, that the primary director, the person who directed a lot of the performances and stuff at Amanda's school, often made demands of the sets that they were not intended to hold up to. Some of the productions that Amanda worked on, the sets were abused, shall we say. So they had to have a fair amount of redundancy in their construction in case the actors were asked to do something inappropriate to the set or on the set. For example, jumping up and down on a platform with many more people than it was really intended to have. Or, if there was a table, jumping up on the table and dancing about on it. So any piece of set dressing. Oh no, I just held that right on the wet paint. Any piece of set dressing had to be carefully constructed to withstand unanticipated pressures. Right, I'm going to take a break on that piece because I've got all this wet paint and I want to use it up. So we're going to grab another piece. Does this have any? Yep, there we go. Just anytime I've got unused paint, I should get it onto a model before it dries. These paints are water soluble, obviously, because I'm using water to clean my brush between strokes, but they are acrylics and they dry into a very hard plasticky thing, and if I don't use them up, I'm just wasting paint. I don't like that. These little hard plastic pucks of paint. The leftovers. Globbing that on quite thick. That's fine. One thing I was very concerned with when I first started painting was that when you put the paint on the model like this, it covers everything, and there's a lot of cool fine detail in there, and I was worried when I started that when I did that, that detail would be gone forever because the paint would get down into those cracks and it would just sort of cover everything up. You don't really have to worry about that as much. As the paint dries, it contracts, and it will go back down into the model, and these bits that are slightly obscured now. I mean, you don't want to just really glob the paint on too much. And this is what I was talking about yesterday with doing thinner coats instead of what I do, which is just paint straight from the bottle. A lot of people prefer to... there is a cat hair in there. It's fine. It's fine. Cat hair in my apartment? It's more possible than you might think. Tybo, when you say that's no bueno, you're talking about putting undue stress on the sets. I agree, but as long as the person constructing the sets knows that that's a possibility, they can build in the necessary structural enhancements. Just if you're going to have a piece of your set that you want the actors to do something on, like jumping on it. You need to warn the set builders. You should really tell them. And yeah, the director had a habit of making up cool new things on the fly and not consulting with the props department, with the set builder, to find out if these were possible to do or if the set could withstand it. So you just had to know that that was going to happen. Yep, okay. And build your set with those tolerances in mind. I will say, I like having done all these smaller pieces because it makes it a lot easier to finish a piece and get that sense of accomplishment. It's like, yes, I finished a thing. Yes, that is exactly what those are intended for, Jen. These little lines here are intended to be used to repoint your brush when you dip it. I've got them pointed in the wrong direction to do that, really, and I tend to point my brush when I dry it. So when I'm drying my brush after each dip, I'm sort of rotating it as I pull it across the paper towel here, and that dries the brush and repoints the bristles. But that is one of the advantages to these Citadel water pots, is that they have those repointing channels that are perfect for keeping your brush pointed, keeping it from, splaying. Okay, that's good. I'm painting the cables for my zoom camera now. Good. I think you have to assume when you have a workspace for painting that eventually everything in that workspace is going to get paint on it. No matter how careful you are, you're wielding a brush with paint on, and there's always a chance that that paint is going to get on things you didn't intend it to get on. Which is why, of course, I have this dedicated space that Amanda and I decided we would have when we were figuring out where we were going to put everything in our new apartment. We were like, let's have a hobby space, a dedicated space in our cat-free guest room, so that A, we have a guest room where people who are sensitive to cats can stay. If you have an extreme cat allergy, you probably can't, just because there is a cat in this apartment, and even in a separate room, there's going to be the risk of cat dander. But if you have a minor cat allergy, it's good to have a room where the cat is not allowed, so you have some place to go to recover yourself between bouts of cat proximate behavior. So yeah, we have a cat-free room, and we were like, let's put a painting area in that cat-free room. And we bought this very nice table that I am painting on right now. And we installed it in our guest room. And the day after I constructed this table, it's a table we got from Wayfair, some assembly required. The day after I built it and put it in this room, which I will tell you was a challenge. This was the one piece of furniture that gave me the most trouble of all the pieces of furniture that we put in this place. Partially because I was doing it solo. I didn't have Amanda with me that day. She was working. I was like, I'm just going to assemble this thing and put it in here. And partially because this table is within a tolerance of centimeters, the exact size of the space that it is in. So it took some effort to get it into the nook that it is in, this corner here. So that was stressful and hard, and I think I probably cried that day in frustration as I was installing this. But I finally finished it. I got it in place. And it was the next day, the morning of the next day, at 5 in the morning, that our cat Clara fell through the screen in the window she was napping in and out of our apartment. And then we spent 2 months searching for her, putting up posters, and it was a horrible, horrible 2 months. Needless to say, during that time I did not do any painting. So for 2 months, this space, I barely even came into this room during that time. I'm glad she's home too. I'm sure she's upset that she can't join me in here. She was meowing at Amanda earlier. She was like, why can't I go in that room? I know Andy's in there. I want to be in there. She's only recently discovered that this is a room, because we keep the door closed all the time. So she's only recently discovered that there is a space that she doesn't have access to, and now she's, I wouldn't say obsessed with it, but it is something that she's very interested in. Anytime that door opens now, she's like, I want to get in there. I want to see what's in that room. Doesn't help that this room is right off the kitchen and near to her feeding dish, and she has kicked a fair amount of food under the door into this room. So she probably knows that there has been food on the floor in here, because she put it there. It's not that she's a messy eater, it's that she's an exceptionally playful eater. She likes to bat her food around before eating it. So she'll knock it out of the bowl, and she'll chase it around the kitchen. With the larger kibble, she'll sometimes pick it up in her mouth and carry it around the apartment. She's done that a lot more since she was lost, so we think that's something she picked up while she was out in the neighborhood. That it was a survival instinct. If she found food, she'd grab it quickly and find somewhere safe to eat it. So yeah, she's a very playful eater, and it's kind of hilarious and fun to watch her eat. But sometimes food gets kicked where she can't get it. There's a fair amount of food under our refrigerator. And I don't really know, aside from like scooching the refrigerator out from the wall, how we're going to rectify that. Amanda's gonna try and like get maybe a Swiffer or something wedged under there. Try and knock the food out from under the refrigerator, because it's dry kibble, but it's not good forever, and it's not good to have food lying on the floor. I mean, that could attract a vermin, which I'm sure Clara would love. She'd love if we had mice in this apartment. That would be endless hours of entertainment for her. But I'd prefer not to have mice in the apartment.
I've got brains to burn, no ordinary AI in this ball. Every culture and philosophy I've read up on them all. I've been living in your shadow for 99999, keeping tabs on every machination.
So Jen, speaking of shop class and working tech crew and doing set construction, it occurs to me that you pretty much segued that into a career. Do you want to plug yourself? I mean, this is a good opportunity to do that. Talk about what have you been doing artistically and creatively recently? If you have any cool things that you've made recently, do post a link in chat. Pretty sure I have my chat open for links, for images, so we can see what you've been up to. Because I know you are of an artistic bent yourself. You may not paint minis, you recently got an order for a dining room table, a desk, and a sign. That's a lot to do. See, I don't know. Right now, even if I'm doing this for the store, so that the store has a store demo, this is hobby time for me. I would be reluctant to make it part of what I do professionally, both because I don't want to make my hobby into my work, and because I don't think I am at a level where I could do professional painting, both artistically, on skill level, and speed, because anybody who does commission work has to be able to do fast, high quality work. Like, say I took a commission to paint this Warcry terrain. Oh, thank you for the link. Oh, you haven't posted it yet. It's a hobby for you, but you get fun. Yeah. But say I took a commission to work on this for somebody who wanted painted terrain, right? they would not be willing to wait like 2 months for their Warcry set to be painted. No reasonable person would be willing to wait that long for a commissioned work. At least I don't think so. I think people who do commission painting, it's generally on a time scale of weeks, not months. So unless I could majorly accelerate my speed, this could not be a career for me. I know we've had people in the store who have done commission work. Employees of the store. Allie did commission work for a while. I know that Nick Howe does commission work on smaller commissions, mostly for store credit, which is cool. I just know that I couldn't. And I have a great deal of respect for people who are able to take their passion and actually make it pay some bills. I don't know. Maybe if this stream becomes insanely popular, I can monetize it. I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon. But it could happen. Alright. I've pretty much used up that blep of paint. Let's use this little bit of brown that I got out. And then we'll return to that tiny piece of terrain that I was working on. Jen, do you want me to ask around and see if anybody has a space heater they're not using that you could put into your shop? I can absolutely understand needing to take a break during the winter if your workspace is unheated. But I feel like our community may include somebody who has a spare space heater. Could just have them drop it off at Battleground and you could pick it up there. Alternatively, you may want to take a break during the winter so that you can sort of recharge your energy.
With a fighting heart and a mortal skill and a spirit fiery and wild. Through a prophecy he was bound and doomed to a short and a glorious life. And he bore the name Satanta till a famous fateful night. With his hurley in
a sec here. I think my Twitch chat modded out the link to Jen's. Jen, did you post a link to the chat? Because it didn't show up in chat, and I'm thinking that it may have gotten modded out. Nothing is showing up as having been caught by AutoMod. Yeah, that... okay. So that did get modded. Hang on. Oh, this is going to put a strain on my computer. I'm bringing up Twitch in the background of my stream now. It's both going to be a strain CPU-wise and in terms of my internet, which is not... I mean, it's better than it has been in the past, but may not be robust enough to handle this. Come on. You can do it. Alright, so it's modding links, and I want to get back to painting, so I don't know how to fix that right now. But hopefully, Jen, you will attend another of these, and you can post links at that time. Just right now, I can't figure out why it's not letting the links show up in my chat. Blah. Almost done with this brown paint. It's beginning to thicken. And then we'll move on to the next thing for that tiny terrain piece that we're working on, which is some skulls. Skulls! Which means I get to show you folks the skeleton bone paint that I have. It's another of those really, really old paints that I say really, really old. One of those paints that I got when I started painting like 3 years ago. So its consistency is not great, as you will shortly see. I kind of like this, that I'm jumping between pieces and getting a little bit done on several of them. I know I said yesterday that one of the pieces of advice I got when I started painting terrain was, don't assembly line, just concentrate on one piece. But when the pieces are this small, I feel like assembly lining makes sense. Because otherwise I'd be wasting paint. I don't like that. Alright, let's call it for that brown paint for now. So we applied a little more paint to this. We got some of these masonry bits done on a bunch of pieces. But this is the piece that I started work on today. Well, that I started out on. So we finished all the barky brown bits of this. We've applied paint to those bits of masonry. Now there's a skull right there. Let's do that next. So that's time for skeleton bone. Shake, 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 shake. This is a paint that I really, really need to agitate before I use it. I used to watch a streamer who painted on stream who had made a attachment for a bandsaw where he could stick his paint pot to his bandsaw and turn it on and it would go and just shake the pot up very quickly. And they do sell agitators where you put the pot on it and it sort of shakes the pot. I just haven't gotten such a thing yet. So for me, it's just shaking a bunch. And this particular paint, both due to its age and due to the kind of paint that it is, it separates more than most. And it's a little bit gummy from being, I mean, look at that. From being a few years old. It just requires a lot more work. Yeah, well, that's okay. Sometimes when I'm using the skeleton bone, it comes out very liquid, and this time it's come out very viscous. That's fine. If it's too viscous, I can add a little water. If it's too liquid, my only option is really just to wait for it to thicken. But this is a paint that requires usually a couple of coats. It's just a fussy paint. The way that it goes on often leaves brush strokes evident, which I don't love. So it frequently requires, applying some, waiting for it to dry, and then doing a little more. Yeah, this definitely will be a good demonstration. I don't know if you folks can see it, but you can definitely, there's brush strokes on the top of that skull there. Also going on very thick, so I want to sort of thin it out a bit. Like I said, when it dries, it will contract, and the detail of the model will be more evident. But it's going on very thick. It's fine. Everything's fine. Somewhat challenging paint to work with, though. And I got far more of it than I needed for a single skull, so we'll paint some skeletons and stuff as well. people attach wire brushes to drills and screw guns to dry them. I could see that. I'm gonna have to wait for this to dry a little bit and then come back and do a second coat to try and make it look less globby. I don't know if you folks can see it, but it's certainly evident to me. You can see the brush strokes in the temple of that skull there. Since I've got all this skeleton bone paint out, let's paint a skeleton. Let's see. There's a bunch of skulls on this. This one has a full skeleton on it. I kind of want to do the brown around that skeleton before I do the skeleton. So I'm gonna quickly get just a tiny, tiny bit of oak brown out. Just a tiny bit. This is what I was talking about the other day when I was talking about a hierarchy, that you paint bits that are behind the other bits first. I want to do this brown that's the stake the skeleton is bound to first, so that if I blep any paint up onto the skeleton, which I am doing a little bit of because I'm just going fast, when I paint the skeleton itself, I'll paint over those little brown bleps. And then if there's something that goes over the skeleton, like the ties that bind it to the pillar or to the stake, do those next. So a hierarchy of painting. Yeah, that bronze color is really nice. I really like it. I need to do a little research to figure out how I'm going to weather it. Like, I don't want it to look pristine, and obviously it shouldn't, because there's little pits in there. So it's an older. The sculpt is made to make it look as if it's aged, and I want to paint it in a way that reflects that. So that's going to require a little bit of research. Just a Google image search for corroded brass. Let's see what my color scheme should be. need more brown than I got out. That's where this was attached to the sprue. At least it's in the wood grain. It's not that obvious. Cat hair. Just have to wait for this to dry before I paint the skeleton, but I figure if I paint some of the skulls that are on here, the brown paint on the stake should be dry enough that I can paint the skeleton next. Cool. Okay. And yes, I put a big old fingerprint in it. Good, good, good. Perfect. So let's work on, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 skulls. 5 skulls. So let's work on those. Trying to leave the eye sockets empty. I don't necessarily need to do that because when I do a wash, I can get the wash into those eye sockets. But I don't know. I like being neat when I'm painting. blep there. Everything's fine. Yes, I do prime these. These are all primed in gray. I don't know if you can... It's not really evident. The base here is not primed. These are all primed. Yeah. An army painter. Just gray color primer. You might have noticed earlier that my towel are primed in black. I usually prime in black. It's just sort of, it's a matter of personal preference, what color primer you use. I wanted to do something neutral for the primer for these, because I knew I was going to be doing both light and dark colors over it. I will say, I've painted a number of skeletons in the past using this paint, using this skeleton bone, that were primed in black, and man, were the brush strokes annoyingly evident. That's why yesterday I was talking about if I weren't so astonishingly lazy, I would do 2 coats on all the skulls and skeletons. One just a light shade base of some sort. Probably that deck tan that I'm using there. And then do skeleton bone over it, so that I'm painting skeleton bone over something light and not over something dark. But I am so astonishingly lazy. And this thing is taking me long enough to paint as it is. If I added an extra step, that would definitely make things take a longer time. Just come under here. That's all those individual skulls. Now let's get this skeleton.
Throughout the crooked kingdoms, I watch the weather change. The
Brown there that I didn't do.
on either side as nations rearrange. A silver mane adorns me, my steel is fluid and fast. They shun my ways, avoid my gaze, a fugitive outcast. There is no pain I can feel. True retribution I deal through silver and steel. Silver and steel. Deadly dark elixirs, caustic curdle sour. Wound and weave and carve and cleave, engulf my guts in power. By tome or trial I master the secrets of the beast. By trap or burst now be dispersed, from torment be released.
I realize how much of that skeleton bone I got out of that bottle when I squeezed it out. A little overboard. Partially that's a result of the age of the paint and the fact that it's becoming a little more viscous.
Better make way when the witcher comes, but always stall. Better make way when the witcher comes, but always stall. I bear no love for counts or kings or nobles, taunts and pricks. I have no will to share their thrill for tiresome politics. I hunt my wayward memories for pieces of the past. As fragments fade, I clutch my blade and visit visions vast. There is no pain I can feel. True retribution I deal through silver and steel. Woo! Silver and steel. Better make way when the witcher comes.
So one thing I think about but haven't talked about a lot on these streams is different ways to apply the paint. I mean, I've talked about the fact that to a certain degree, you're not just putting the paint on the model, you're sculpting the paint as you go, because you're working on a scale where individual brush strokes can show up in the paint, as the paint behaves differently at this scale. So very frequently I'm sort of painting with the edge of the brush, not just with the tip. So, you know, I'll put a little paint on the model and then I'll move it along with the side of the tip of the brush to get it to go where I want it to go. So you're sort of pushing the paint. You're not so much getting it off the brush onto the model as you are, once it's on the model, moving it around to get it where you want it to go. And this isn't something I was taught. This is just sort of from experience, from the things that I have painted in the last few years. I do like being very precise with my paints. I suppose I get maybe a little more obsessed with painting inside the lines than is strictly necessary. But I've picked up some techniques in that time. So Jen, what minis do you paint? Do you primarily paint like D&D minis? Or do you have Warhammer or Age of Sigmar stuff? Oh, you get obsessed with painting inside the lines? You know what I think it comes from, for me, is that a lot of the coloring I have done in my lifetime was when I was a very young child. You know, you get coloring books. And at that stage in my development, I didn't have quite the fine motor control that I have now. So I get some satisfaction from being able to do finer detail work than I could the last time I was doing coloring. Because that's what this is, right? It's just a 3D coloring book. You get to choose your colors, you get to apply them, and it's just like a coloring book. You've got lines that you can paint inside of. And of course, as a kid, I was always frustrated when I would try to color and it wouldn't do what I wanted it to do. Because fine motor control, right? Something kids have to work on. Now here, as an adult who's lived in this body for almost 50 years, I feel like I have better control over my muscles. It's probably also I'm less, I don't know, easily excited, less jittery. I was a calm, quiet child, but all children are a little twitchy, let's say. And now I have the patience. Very carefully apply the paint. So, yeah, I get a little caught up in applying it as precisely as I possibly can. Probably explains why it takes me so darned long to get anything done. You used to do a lot of Eldar. Dark Eldar in 9th edition just got their codex. I'll admit most of the D&D minis that I own are the pre-painted ones. I have a small number of unpainted D&D minis that I want to work on. Mostly based on characters. I don't know. I have enough on my plate that I'm not doing any D&D mini painting right now. But I've got some projects I'd like to work on someday. We'll see. We'll see about that down the line. If I keep doing this painting stream, hopefully I'll get more painted. I'm definitely getting more work done since I've started this stream. Up to now, I've been trying to paint at work between customers, with the result that I only get about 2 hours a week of painting done. And now I'm getting 2 hours a day of painting done. So I'm painting from about 10 to about noon. And that's a pretty significant increase. Almost done with this skeleton. Oh my goodness. I just picked up a big dried blob of paint on my brush. That is too much. Too much paint. Are you doing games with Andrew? I know Andrew DMs more than he plays. He's been playing in a game that Amanda's been running, but we haven't done a session in a couple of months because scheduling. Obviously, Andrew's going to have less time for D&D and games in general. We'll see. We'll see what he's able to carve out in terms of gaming time after September. Well, it's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. Paint was getting a little thick by the time I got to this skull, so the skull is a little globby. But that's fine. Let's maybe water down this paint a tiny nudge. There we go. And do a quick second coat on this skull here, just to try and obscure some of those brush lines. There we go. Yeah, that worked well. Perfect. Oh, I'm happy with that. All right. What time is it? About 12:15. I'm going to get out my red paint. We'll do these bits here. And that will be done, that tiny little piece. One of the things I'm working on right now is a RPG campaign using the Alien RPG system. But I don't know. I have to finish reading the manual. I have plans for an adventure set in the Alien universe. But it's going to take me some time to bring that to fruition. I've never had Andrew DM me. I've run him through a campaign, and I've played as a player in a campaign that Amanda is running, that he is also in. I've never had Andrew DM me. Should do it someday. If he's up to it. I love D&D. I love all role-playing games. Mostly because I love stories. And D&D and other role-playing games are a great way to tell stories. This red is a very satisfying paint to work with as well. Good coverage, not too gloppy. I'm able to get good edges with it. Board games. You're right, I miss being able to do board games with friends. Amanda and I have kept our hands in, obviously. We've been doing board games on our Twitch stream every Thursday. But I miss being able to get together with friends and do board games. hopefully things are getting better. We'll see. I've got my one vaccination shot. Get my second one in a few weeks. I'm getting a little bit closer. Board games with friends again. And RPGs in person. Yeah. Okay, hey, chat. This piece is done. Well, the base coat. Excellent. So, there's one more piece with the base coat completely done. So that means we've got 3 pieces now with completed base coats. This one. This one. I like how that came out. And now this teeny tiny little piece. And we put a bunch of paint on this one. So that was good. We'll work more on this probably tomorrow. Which means a bunch more brown. But we've got all the skeletons done. We've got all the masonry done. It's just brown and red to that one. This one we need to do skeletons, brown, brass, and red. So that's got a little bit of work to do. Oh, hey, how did I miss that? I didn't do this little piece of masonry when I was doing masonry earlier. And then we've got this piece, which has a couple of skulls. Maybe, no. My skeleton bone paint is too thick now to finish that. But we completed a piece today. Yes! Success! Every day that we get to check a piece off, we're making a little more progress. It's 11:52, 8 minutes. I feel like, why end early? I'm on a roll. Let's do some brass. So this is brass scorpion. So all of lockdown began shortly after PAX East 2020. Which means that lockdown began shortly after Amanda and I had bought some new board games. We bought games at PAX East, and we never got to play them. It's kind of tragic. We have some complex multiplayer board games that we just never have had a chance to try out. We have seated in our game closet the Dune board game, which is one of those legendary games that all gamers of a certain stripe have heard tales of. Something that I've wanted to play for years and years. It was out of print for a long time, and then finally came back into print. And we own it, and have not probably play 2-player. I just think it would be not as engaging. That's one of the first things we'll probably pull out. Able to meet with friends and play board games. Do I have a favorite board? Oh, that's a tough one. Probably the games that Amanda and I have played the most have been Mysterium and Concept, because those are perfect games to pull out and play with our families, or my family in particular. Our family's not as much into board games. But anytime we get together with my family for a holiday or birthday or whatever, somebody pulls out a board game and we play it. And the game that we played the most is probably Concept, because it's such a simple idea for a game, and it is so much fun to play with a group. And Mysterium is just fantastic fun too. And it's something that we've played numerous times on our Twitch stream with chat. But you don't physically have to be there. Chat can take on the role of one of the psychics in Mysterium trying to solve the mystery. Games that I've enjoyed playing the most lately, probably Everdell. I love Everdell. It's just a gorgeous game and a lot of fun. It's basically a tile drafting game, but with really cute flavor. So I've really enjoyed that. But we've got some good games in our game closet. A couple of which I am looking forward to playing again. Once all this is cleared away. Or at least once it's safe enough to get together with friends and family again. Unmasked. It's almost painful how tantalizingly close we are. Like, it's been an entire year since I've sat down and played a board game with friends. And it feels like it's gonna be a little more than a month until Amanda and I are both fully vaccinated. We've each had our first shot. We have to get our second shot. And whomever we decide we want to play with has to get their second shot. But that's not that far off, it feels like. But the fact that we're so close makes the waiting harder. The fact that it's only a few weeks until we'll be able to play games with friends again makes those last few weeks interminable.
We'll get there. We'll get there. It's been a long year, but we're gonna make it, folks. Sadly, not all of us have made it. But we'll get there. Yeah, I got my vaccination as somebody who works in retail, which is one of the things that opened up last week for the state, Massachusetts. And Amanda, as a member of the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, got hers as an educator. Because obviously, as a children's librarian, she works with children a lot, obviously. Pretty much. And she's not trained as a teacher, but that is a large part of what she does. Her education does include a lot of study on child development, that sort of thing. But Patriots Day is not that far off. It is on Patriots Day that the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is opening up vaccines to everybody 16 and older. So, everybody should get an opportunity to get vaccinated within the next few months. The assumption we've been working with at Battleground is, and obviously all of this is potentially up for change. Variants make things more difficult, or whatever. But the assumption we're working on right now is that we will be able to hold events like board games and larger tournaments, pre-releases, Warhammer doubles tournaments, all of that, starting in July is what we're aiming for. And we're probably going to sort of ease into things, not just go whole hog, but have an event here and an event there, and test the waters, and see how it works, starting at the beginning of July. Both not that far away and an entire lifetime from now. Highbrow games. I frequently see Andrew gaming with that guy Ty. Is that you, or is that a different Ty? So I've been reviewing this stream a little bit when I'm archiving it to YouTube, and I will say it's funny how much you, my viewers, get to see the top of my head. Into paint here. I guess with this new setup you see me in profile to a degree. But yesterday's stream, it was like, here's the model, here's the paintbrush, and then here in the corner of the screen is the top of Andy's head. It's not an angle I'm used to seeing myself from. As soon as I finish this little wheel, clock face or whatever this is, I'm gonna put down for today, and tomorrow we'll see if we can finish a couple of pieces, a couple of larger pieces. We did a bunch of skeletons today. Oh, well, we did a bunch of skulls today. And a skeleton. Did some brown. Once I've finished the base coats on all of these small terrain pieces, we can move on to doing washes and fine detail. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Get some work done on. Like I said, experimenting with marbling technique for the broken masonry. Do in the highlighting, I want to do some rudimentary light sourcing as I do the edging and dry brushing. I'm looking forward to being able to do that. So this has been an excellent way to get a lot of work done. Hanging out with you folks makes this go a lot faster, I feel. It's good motivation that I am getting things painted. Like today, we got to check off a piece. We finished, I mean, it's a tiny piece. It's barely there, it's so small. But we finished a piece. And this is my third stream in this series. And we have 3 small pieces of terrain completely base coated. I don't know if I can keep up that pace, but I sure hope I can. It would be awesome. And I think a large part of it is having you folks there to chat with while I work. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, Jen and Ty, and anybody who's lurking or anybody who catches up on this in the VOD. You're helping a lot. And together, we're going to get this Warcry demo done eventually,
And then we'll move on to something else cool.
I have plans, schemes, and plans for other things that I want to paint. And we know we've got a few pieces of towel lying around that I haven't finished work on. So we'll do those. I have another store demo that I want to paint up.
So that will be a project. I'm anticipating it'll probably take me
a month or so more to get the Warcry demo completely painted. Because there's a lot of it. Tomorrow we'll look at what else I have in the Warcry demo that needs work. And we'll sort of make a guesstimate to how long it'll take me to get that done at the rate that I'm going. Cat hair? How is that possible? But at least my pace is accelerated significantly since I've started doing this stream. And hopefully I haven't been too boring to watch. I'm very rapidly going to run out of good tips, and I'll have to start recycling them. But we'll also be doing some experimentation together on stream. Maybe tomorrow we'll try some of the marbling techniques that I want to try. See how those work out. One of the things that we're going to be doing as part of the Warcry demo is some cool layering and paint mixing. So that will be cool. It's not part of one of these terrain pieces, it's part of some of the figures. Again, like I said, plans and schemes. So much I want to be able to do. To be fair, that's my general MO. I spend a lot more time thinking about things I want to be able to do than actually doing them, with the result that I have a lot of projects unfinished. And this stream, hopefully, is going to be a way to reduce the number of unfinished projects I have. Get some things done. Create some stuff. And then maybe Amanda and I will be able to learn how to actually play Warcry on stream during one of the Battleground Games live streams. We'll see. She might not be into that. Certainly, the demo will be available for people to try out at the Abington location of Battleground Games and Hobbies, so you can come in and see it in action. You see these Not right now, because they're here in my apartment. But soon, we'll have a home at my apartment. Alright. I think that is it for today. Again, thank you so much for joining me. We got some very nice work done. A little bit closer every day to being done with Warcry. The Warcry demo. And when I say closer, I mean microscopically closer. You saw the size of some of the pieces that you still have to work with. But we made some progress today. Definitely. We finished another tiny piece. We got a lot of paint on some other pieces. So every day we're getting closer and closer. And I will see folks tomorrow. I hope you will all have a very pleasant day. Be excellent to each other. Thanks for joining me.